Welcome to the world of scale modeling with Mike Ashe, where techniques, tips, and creativity come alive with dozens of tutorials, projects, tape-up reviews, and picture references to help you build better scale models and enjoy our wonderful hobby. Welcome to part 15 of our multi-part series on detailing and building the Revell Monogram 148 scale B-17G. In part 15, I'm going to show you my decaling techniques, and we're going to wrap up the remaining clear parts, both masking, painting, and weathering. So, let's get started. I've done two previous videos specifically on the decaling techniques that I've used, that I've developed over the past 30 years. The most important thing that I could share with you is that I cut out all of the clear film that is possible around a decal, because it minimizes the opportunity for silvering along the edges, which sometimes happens even though you have a high gloss coat. So by cutting out as much of that clear film as possible from these large decals, you minimize that. So when these go on, they'll look like they're painted on. On these numbers, you can't really cut out the individual numbers on here because you'll never get them straight, but you can cut around the perimeter in order to reduce the likelihood of of silvering around the edges. So I finished the propellers, and I just wanted to show you how they look. And what I did again was I cut as much of the decal film out as I could from around the decal. And they look like they're painted on there. The other thing you need to remember is you need to take a damp Q-tip and wipe off the edges around each decal, because sometimes there's a little glue film in there. So if you leave some of that glue film on there and then put a dull coat over it, you're going to see that glue, and then you're never going to be able to get it off once you put a dull coat on it. So always make sure that you clean around the decals after they're dry. So all of these decals came out really, really well. And it's a high gloss finish, and I use Minwax polyurethane clear gloss. And once I dull coat them, then I'll go around the edges a little bit with a silver pencil and then dull coat them again to seal the silver pencil, because most of the propellers around the edges is where the paint starts to wear off first. And again, I don't like to overdo the weathering on my aircraft. I've seen some models where they're heavily weathered, and I got to tell you, no self-respecting pilot's going to get in a plane that looks like the wings are going to fall off. So you got to be mindful of how much weathering you do on an aircraft. And this is a pile of the decal, the decal remnants that I cut out. And I've got a lot more to do. I've got a lot of small decals that I need to cut out. And I always keep my decals in Ziplocs. These decals are 30 years old, and they're as good as the day I bought the kit. And if you have, sometimes you gotta cut around decals. Like, as an example, I'll cut around this one. I'll just cut around the perimeter here very, very carefully. And when it goes on, it'll look like it's painted on. So as I progress, I'll show you the smaller decals and how I cut those out, and how I reduce the opportunity for silvering by cutting out as much of the clear film around even the small decals. All the decals that I wanted to use have been applied, and it came out pretty good. I really I like the way they came out, and the decals responded really well to the microset and microsole system that I've used for years. And again, I did cut out as much of the clear film as possible. And here we go. and it really made a big difference. It really minimizes the opportunity for silvering, which even if you have a clear gloss finish, it can still happen, especially on older decals. So you got to be careful. But we are ready to move on to the next step, which is to dull coat it and mild weathering, and then I can go ahead and pull off all of this masking and tissue paper, and I got to paint the navigation lights and the formation lights, and then we're ready to wrap this beautiful puppy up, finish the assembly, and put it in the display case. So it's looking pretty good. I've got 2 coats of Tester's Clear Flat Dull Coat on there, and it came out pretty good. Got some dust bunnies I need to get off, but for the most part, it's looking pretty good. So now, my next step is to go ahead and do some weathering. I'll start with silver paint and do some chipping with that silver paint, and I'm going to do the same thing on the propellers, which have also been dull coated, and they came out pretty good too. So now it's time to start the weathering process. After I get the silver paint applied for the chipping effect, I'll show you what that looks like. It's going to be very minimal and very mild. I've got the last 3 clear parts masked and ready for airbrushing, and it came out pretty good. It's really important to get a coating of interior green on this, because if you don't, it's just not going to look right when you glue it on. Here's the back, the aft canopy glass for the aft gunner. And here is the turret. I've got the hatches painted, airbrushed, and I'll show you what that looks like once I get the tape off. And here are some of the clear parts that I have masked. And I'll get real close here so you can see. I use tiny strips of tape. And for the round areas, I use my Waldron punch to punch out the correct size masking tape for a disc on these round edges. On these large circular sections, I just use tiny strips of tape, and you can get a pretty decent circle if you use tiny strips of tape. Here is the cockpit glass. And once I take the tape off, we'll be ready to install these parts. And the ball turret, that's how I do the ball turret, and I'll show you the trick here. This is just evergreen tubing, and the machine gun barrels slide right in there, and now airbrushed it in one session. And it's been dirtied up with some pastels too, and then sealed. All these parts have been painted, a little bit of dry brushing with silver paint, and then covered with a dusting of pencil pastel, and then sealed with a clear flat. So now we need to go ahead and unmask some of this stuff and see how it looks. So let me get the masking off, and I'll get back with you in a few minutes and show you what the parts look like. I've got all the tape removed, and the parts came out pretty good. Oop, there we go. Just need to run a Q-tip with some Windex on it to clean them up. This is what careful masking will do. Tiny strips of masking tape. And the undersides, what I do is I put a coat of the interior color first, and then the final surface color. There's the front and back. Again, they just need some Windex, and we're good to go. Here's the ball turret. The ball turret doesn't fit together very well, so you kind of have to work with it, but once it's installed on the bottom of the B-17, it'll look pretty good. It's pretty dark in there. You can see a little bit of the marring on the surface, and again, Windex will take care of some of that. But came out pretty good. And these are the two hatches, forward hatch and the aft hatch, both of which have been cut out, thinned, and with some detail added. So we'll start adding parts to the forward area of the model, and as I said, we'll work our way back and I'll do some progress videos as we proceed. This concludes part 15 of detailing and building the Revell Monogram 148 scale B-17G. Part 16 will be the last video in this extensive series, where I'll show you my weathering techniques using pencil pastels, and we'll do the final assembly. Have a great evening and happy scale modeling. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give us a thumbs up. And when you get the chance, visit our website at www.mikeashley.com, where you're going to find dozens of free PDF downloads, including tutorials, picture references, model galleries, projects, and my 5 original scale modeling books. Thanks to Bensound and Videvo for the royalty-free music, and happy scale modeling!